Okay, I think we'll begin now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session of Screen Southasia, which is our monthly online screening collaboration with Film Southasia. If you're joining us, you've probably been watching Rajan Kathet's Split Ends, a film from Nepal, a short but very moving and affecting film, which captures the lives of migrant workers from Nepal in Lisbon. And thank you so much, Rajan, for uh, agreeing to be with us here today and answer a few questions. Before we dive in, I also want to ask everybody who is listening and watching to please support us, because we'd like to keep doing more of these screenings and events. So please check out our Patreon program and support our work. And please keep joining these screenings. We have over 1,000 people who are part of this community and watching every month, and we hope to grow even more. So thank you again, and I'm just going to hand over to our editor, Roman, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you, Raisa. Rajanji, first, namaste. Good to see you. I'm also actually in Kathmandu right now, so good to know we're both in town. And I want to kick things off also, of course, by saying a big thank you to Raisa, but also to all the other members of the Himal team who put this together and do it every month. So thank you so much. As Raisa said, I think Himal is, we need reader support. We're an entirely independent newsroom, and reader support is a big part of how we sustain what we do. And we can keep growing and keep offering wonderful things like Screen Southasia every month. So yeah, there's a link in the chat. Please do support us if you can. And also very importantly to everybody who's joining us, please help us spread the word. Like Raisa said, we've got more, we've been doing this for about a year. We've got more than 1,000 people, and it's wonderful to see such interest in South Asian documentary, and then to see so many people tuning in to watch and also to join us for the Q&As every month. So please spread the word. And point people to, you can forward the newsletters or point people to the Himal Mag website and the newsletter tab there, please. We would really appreciate it. But with all of that said, I think I will get out of the way as quickly as I can, but I do want to say, watching Rajanji's film kind of with Nepali eyes, I think is especially poignant. I think that it's so short, but also such a very good portrait of kind of where Nepal stands today, right? You have so many young people leaving. I think that last year we had 800,000 plus people leaving Nepal to go abroad and work. These are people of prime working age in a country of about 30 million. So it's almost a 30th of our entire population, and certainly a larger percentage of our working population going abroad every year. And that's been happening for so long. It's become such a hugely defining part of the Nepali experience. Raisa, you were saying, this is a film from Nepal, and that's a slight slip of tongue, but only slightly, because it's short in, the film is shot in Lisbon, but I think that it's the Nepal that is Nepal for so many people. In places like Dublin and Bangkok and Doha and Lisbon, you have Nepalis, young Nepalis, older Nepalis, as the film shows as well, trying to make their way and really struggling. And of course, things are very difficult back home in terms of employment. So of course, a lot of people want to go abroad, but a lot of people also forget or look away from just how difficult it can be out there. So Rajanji, with all of that, thank you for showing all of that. It's hard to show all of that in a 20-minute film, but you found a way. So thank you so much. Thank you for the film. Thank you for joining us. I'll hand you back to Raisa and let her take the conversation forward.
Thank you, and my pleasure. It's been a while since I made the film, because I made it in 2016, and I'm also trying to kind of remember all the fun or all the not much of fun that I had during the filming. And thank you for watching it.
Thank you, Rajan, for joining us today. I'm just going to do a quick intro to Rajan before we dive into the questions. And also, everybody who's listening, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. Rajan Kathet is a filmmaker based in Kathmandu, working in both fiction and documentary films. Rajan's first feature documentary, No Winter Holidays, premiered in the International First Feature Competition section of Sheffield DocFest 2023 and is the winner of the NATIVA Award at Alternativa Film Awards 2023 in Kazakhstan. His short fiction work, Bare Trees in the Mist, was screened at several international film festivals, including the Toronto International Film Festival in 2019, Tampere Film Festival, HKIFF, Encounters Film Festival, Dharamshala IFF, and Short Shorts Film Festival and Asia. Rajan collaborates with national and international filmmakers through his production company, Salpa Films. He has worked on projects such as the Taiwanese feature documentary After the Snowmelt by Yi Shan-lo, which premiered at Visions to Rail 2024, and the TV documentaries In the Land of Machines by Hyo Chul-nyung from South Korea, Home Street Home by Alan Lau for Radio Television Hong Kong, and A Himalayan Endgame by Deepak Chaturvedi, all of which are in post-production. Rajan is also engaged in film education and mentors young filmmakers through his involvement in local film schools and filmmaking workshops. He regularly contributes to the Kathmandu International Mountain Film Festival Doc Lab. Rajan, welcome and thank you for joining us. Just to dive right in, I wanted to start by asking why you chose to focus on the barbershop in Lisbon in particular. What was it about that space that made you think that it would make for a compelling kind of setting?
So this film was my master thesis film, like our graduation film, and actually we had to make 26 minutes. That was the kind of the standard length, but you could also go up to 15 minutes length also, but 26 would be the standard they would prefer. And at first, because during all the semesters, I was making films about Nepali communities in Europe. And for the final semester, I thought maybe I should break this comfort zone, or I should go out of my comfort zone and try to do something Portuguese. But because of the language issues, because out of Lisbon, the locals, they hardly speak English. And because of the language issue, I thought that maybe I should do a film about Nepali community, because it will be easier during the post-production, during the editing. And I started looking for topics and ideas about Nepali people. And first, I ended up in this language center where the Nepalis used to learn Portuguese. And I sort of beat and I consulted with my mentors, teachers in the university, and they were not very fan of what I was doing in these language centers. And they asked, "Ma, it's good, but still try to look for plan B, plan C, you know." And once I went to this barber shop to get my hair done, and as I was waiting for my turn, and then I kind of listened to this conversation between the barber and the customer, and I felt like, wow, this place looks like a hub, you know, like a Nepalese people's hub or South Asian hub, because a lot of other South Asian people also, they used to come there to get their hair or beard done. And they would not just get their things done, but it was kind of a platform for them to share their whereabouts, their pain, their success, and their stories and their struggles. And I thought, because instead of wandering around finding story, trying to find a story, this barbershop would be a very perfect place, because I didn't have to look for characters, because the people are coming in by themselves, and I just had to convince them whether they would allow me to film them or not, you know. That was the first idea. And as I started visiting there more and more to observe how things go in the barbershop, then I realized that instead of filming everything, maybe I should just focus on a frame, you know, like maybe filming the mirror. Actually, the whole film is a sort of the mirror. The camera was placed very exactly next to the character, the customer, and I was always filming the mirror. And that's how kind of I kind of started working in it.
Thank you for that, Rajan. And yeah, I did notice that as well, that you kind of chose to use one particular shot and really focus in on the person getting their haircut for much of the documentary, although, you know, there were some shots where you zoomed out a little. Can you explain why you made that kind of stylistic choice?
Because, sorry, I have a bad throat today. Because as a student filmmaker or as a student, you know, like you are really made to watch so many films that really focus on form rather than content, you know, and it kind of, the form of filmmaking really kind of brainwashes us. Of course, I like it. And I was also kind of thinking not to make any traditional film or something about a certain space, you know, certain limitation of the space. And my written thesis was also about this. And we had also seen some kind of this kind of films during our course. And I thought maybe I should just kind of find my position. I should just film the mirror. And because if I film the mirror for, let's say, like 2 or 3 months, there are a lot of costumers I would end up filming. And I was kind of certain that I would be able to find some interesting conversation that could lead to a good story, or that can be edited into a short film, you know. And that was the kind of first inception idea of how I saw this film.
Thank you for that. And I was going to ask how you came to be in Lisbon, but I suppose you kind of indirectly answered that by saying that you were shooting this for your kind of graduate kind of studies. But I also wanted to know, you know, how long you filmed in the shop itself, like over what period of time were you visiting this shop, this barbershop?
Thank you. I was doing my master's in documentary direction. It's an Erasmus program. It's called Doc Nomads, and I was the third batch of a student. And the program was based in Portugal, Hungary, and Belgium. And like each semester you travel, but for the final semester you return to one of these 3 countries. And I chose to return to Portugal because of the Nepali community and because the South Asian food that was quite cheaper in Lisbon, you know, frankly. Yeah, when I started visiting this barbershop, I was really nervous, you know, like because not only Nepali people, like a lot of Portuguese or other immigrants from other countries also, they used to come there. And it was quite a difficult job for me to open up, asking them for their consent, you know. And for the first 10 days, I was just going there with my equipment and I was just watching because I didn't have this courage to ask them if I can film them. And like, I think I remember my first shooting, it was just one customer. And every day, like I would be there for like 3 or 4 hours, but I would only film 1 or 2 customers every day. So I think this went on for like 2.5 months actually. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And something that also really struck me was, you know, among the first opening shots, where there's this conversation between an elderly man who's trying to communicate with the Nepalese barber. So can you also speak a little bit about what you found about the role of language in helping connect to a place and its people, and what you saw while you were filming?
Language, okay. I think the language is not just tied to the identity. There, you know, for Nepali people, language is like learning, being able to speak a local language is kind of being able to earn the survival, you know, for Nepali people. They really struggle to learn Portuguese. And I do this from the language center. A lot of females used to come there to study Portuguese because first, like the most of the main population, they went to Europe, like UK or Germany, and then their visa ran out and they ended up in Portugal, hoping for a European passport. And later, like they invited their spouse to Europe and to Portugal, and And of course, this lot of these women, they're very young and able to earn their livelihood, and they had to learn the language, and they used to come there to learn the language. In Nepal, it was a Nepali person who used to teach Portuguese, and most of these Nepali or Southasian people, like they were learning, and it was kind of a it was not free, but they had to pay very minimum kind of amount to learn the language, because it was run by social organization, and for them, I think for the Nepali community, the language was a kind of the local language is kind of way to survive, you know. So it was kind of I didn't really kind of thought about it. It is about how is it tied to their identity, or what does the language mean to them. For them, it was a kind of by pressure they had to learn the language if they had to survive in Portugal, because most of these immigrants, they don't get jobs in Lisbon where they can also speak English. They have to go to other islands or other remote areas where they have to speak the local language.
Thank you for that, Rajan. And speaking of this, one of the kind of themes that I saw when I was watching the film was that a lot of these Nepalese were coming to Lisbon with a lot of hopes and dreams, and that some of them were having their illusions somewhat shattered about what life in Europe was like. And in your experience, how did Nepalese view migration and this, is this idea of making it in another country very common?
Sorry, can you repeat the last question, please?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, this idea of making it in Europe, sort of like the European dream, if you will, is that something that is common in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at Nepal even now, like most of the youth, they want to leave the country, you know, and I support that, like, because our political situation, and we're at least one of the least developed countries and all the economic condition, and a lot of youths are leaving. Actually, my younger brother, who is an IT engineer, and he was doing quite well. Now he's also leaving for United States next month, you know. And all this dissatisfaction with the political system, or the amount of money they make, or the security of the future, kind of it's really forcing the young generation to leave the country. And the Nepali people who ended up in Portugal, of course, like Portugal is not their first choice. Portugal is a kind of an easy country for them to kind of realize their European dream, actually, because most of the people who ended up in Portugal, they were students who used to study in the United Kingdom or Germany, and once their visa runs out, like, they come to Portugal, where the law is a bit friendly towards the immigrants, and if they pay tax for 5 or 7 years, they are eligible to apply for the passport, you know. And all these people, not just Nepali people, there are a lot of South Asian. The main center in the Lisbon, people kind of mock it as a South Asian choke these days, you know. And I mean, 1 decade ago when I was there, and all these people, even though they are making very less amount of money in Portugal, because the average income is not very great in even the Lisbon, they are doing all these jobs and the hardship just for the passport they can get in 5 or 7 years. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. Thank you for that, Rajan. And I mean, I was also thinking as I listened that so much of this is also relevant to the Sri Lankan context as well, where we've been experiencing economic crisis and people have been thinking a lot about leaving the country, and a lot of these conversations are being had here as well. So to dive a little bit deeper into that topic, you did mention that Portugal is one of these favored countries because of its friendlier kind of regulations. But what are some of the main countries that Nepali migrants tend to gravitate towards, and why?
So I think even the immigrants, sometimes me and my friends, we kind of grade them, like, okay, they are the elite immigrants, and these are the poor immigrants. And now, like the younger generation, those people who at least manage to go to school or college, they are really kind of attracted towards going to Japan and South Korea from Nepal. In South Korea, from government, there's a kind of a government to government deal between Nepal and South Korea, where you can study language and you can go there for 5 years of work, and they earn quite a handsome amount of money in those 5 years, and they can actually make a very good life out of their 5 years of hard work in South Korea. And a lot of Nepali young people, they have also started going to Japan. First they study language and they go there as student, and later they kind of convert themselves, their visa into a working visa, and they stay there. 2 or 3 of my cousins are in Japan, and a lot of my relatives are in Korea. And other young generation of young people who kind of a bit fortunate ones, they go to Australia, Canada, and US, and European countries also. And those who go to Europe, they mostly go to study, because because it's not easy to make a living like in Australia, America, and Europe, and most of the people, their first choice is either America, Canada, and Australia. But if they couldn't manage to go there, they also go to Europe. and the people who go to Portugal now, there's this kind of chain, like first, lot of actually the youth from rural areas, they somehow managed to get Croatia visa to Croatia, and now and they stay in Croatia for 1 month, and they take a train and they go to Lisbon, Portugal. And that's all, like there's a lot of this a kind of indirect human trafficking through Croatia to Portugal from Nepal.
Thank you for that. And do you have a sense of, the volume of people roughly who are leaving and how prevalent it is? I mean, you were saying that even within your family, you're having, family members who are leaving.
I don't know the real number of how many people leave, but it's like thousands every day. That's I'm sure, because we have a lot of flights from Nepal to direct flights from Nepal to Gulf countries, and maybe Suman in the forum participating now, maybe they know the exact number, but now it's like kind of millions of Nepalese people abroad. And in Lisbon, in Portugal, I think in Europe, Portugal is the Portugal hosts the most Nepalese people out of in compared to other European countries. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And also curious to know whether you have kept in touch with the barber who was kind of a central figure just off to the side a lot of the time. And how did he view this whole filming process? And, how's his business doing since then?
Actually, it's kind of my failure, but there are 2 barbers in the film, and I was not I couldn't really kind of make it clear that it was the 2 barbers. Like the guy who is speaking in the phone, like he kind of we can clearly identify this is one of the barber, but the other barber, he always used to have a nose allergy while kind of cutting the hair, and he always used to wear mask, and he hasn't really shown his face in the film. So out of these 2 barber, one of the barber who is always wearing mask, or whose voice we hear, but we didn't really see his face. He was the owner of this barber shop, and he's having a really good life, because even that time he was really hardworking, and he had a girlfriend in Nepal. She went to Portugal, they married, and they have a really good life. And this guy is making quite a lot of money, and I think he has even opened restaurants. And I heard that he's also kind of donating money in charity whenever something happens to Nepal, or he keeps helping Nepali immigrants in Portugal, because a lot of the people, when they go to Portugal for like up to 6 or 1 year. Sometimes these people, they don't get any job, so they really struggle. They even ask money from their family in Nepal to stay there to survive. And I heard that this guy is really helping them. And the other barber who you can see speaking over the phone with one of his uncle or relative. I think a few years back, he got a passport and he moved to Denmark, and now he works in some Danish barbershop.
That's really interesting that there were two barbers. I did notice that the barber wearing the mask did seem to have a different face to the person talking on the phone.
Yeah.
So that answered that question for me, because I was also wondering whether it was the same person or not.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering that. I'm also curious to know whether you saw or noticed any discrimination against the Nepalis in the shop while filming from the Portuguese, or was everybody just welcoming in that space and it was kind of
No, I mean, that was a Nepali barbershop, Nepali owned barbershop, so. And also, I think Portugal is really immigrant friendly. Like, there are a lot of people of color, a lot of Chinese people, a lot of South Asian, and that's why I like Portugal. And and this was a Nepali barbershop, and I never felt this kind of discrimination. Even the Portuguese people were very friendly to the Nepali barbers, and of course, and for the Nepali barbers, the Nepali customers were like friends and families, and they used to laugh, talk, and I never get a hint of any kind of discrimination.
That's great. Great to hear. And another thing that I was really struck by when watching the film was there was this one young child who was very sure about what his haircut should look like. And then there were other kind of Nepali children, maybe who had just arrived, who were kind of more tentative and uncertain. Was that something you saw a lot since you spent a couple of months going there? Did you see the migrants grow more confident and settled in their visits to the barbershop, or was it just a slice of city life and people were not really coming back that often?
I think a lot of the customers, I filmed them for only once, and the story of this uncle who we never see in the film was the only his story I followed up later, and I heard that after I started filming and after I completed the film, this guy actually got the social security paper, and that made him quite happy, and they decided to stay back in Portugal. He never came back to Nepal. That was the only kind of story that repeated, or that I followed up later, and all these customers in these 2 or 3 months, they didn't repeat, in the barbershop. So it was more about the slice of life of these immigrant people in Lisbon, rather than like what their life was shaping up, or like how it's turning for them.
Thank you for that, Rajan. I'm also going to read now a couple of questions from the audience, which have been sent to the chat box. And if anybody else has any questions as well, please feel free to drop them in the chat box as well. So we have a question from Alwyn, who says, in my research on South Asian representation in European cinema or any films addressing South Asian immigrants, I struggled to find even one example, and discovering your film was a welcome relief, as it provided some representation in this area. I'm curious to know if you conducted similar research while making your film. Did you come across any other movies on this topic? And how significant do you believe this representation is?
Yeah, in terms of South Asian representation in European cinema, it's definitely rare, of course, except that one Cannes winning film where there's this Sri Lankan immigrant in France. I forgot that name. The person who made The Wind That Shakes Barley, something. What is the there is a Sri Lankan immigrant in UK or somewhere in France, and besides that, I don't know any kind of South Asian connection in European cinema. And as a student, I had watched a film by my senior from Bhutan, and he had made a film about Bhutan. He's a Bhutanese, but his ethnicity is Nepali. He's a Bhutani Nepali, and he had made a film about Nepali woman married to a Belgian, and he had made a film about this, and that was a very good film, and it kind of opened my eyes. So maybe I should do something about it, because in that way I could feel very connected to the characters, and I think I can tell a story that will resonate even later when I move back to my country, and I could maybe sway around, and there will be no language barrier, and I think that was the reason I chose to make a film about Southeastern Nepali community.
Thank you for that, Rajan. And we have a question from Aunahita. Just watch this lovely vignette. I'm curious to know whether Rajan stimulated the conversations in any way. While I felt the short documentary captured a lot, I also felt it resonated with me because I lived in Nepal and know the context, the enormous financial pressures of migration, the debts the migrants take on, for example. Was it a deliberate choice not to add anything in terms of context or explanation about the issue of migration broadly?
Because I was in this barbershop for so many months, and I had filmed so many people, and actually there was never a need to simulate or kind of inside any kind of conversation friendly. Of course, like now, like when I think of this film now, I feel like maybe I should have incited some deeper conversations. Maybe I should have made a better film, but during that time, I really wanted to make a very super observational film, and I really stayed firm to my belief, and I just kept filming more and more people instead of inciting any conversation. And regarding whether it was a deliberate choice, I think because the process of migration from poor to richer countries is a very kind of it's a global phenomenon, and of course, like people migrate when they have some problem in their country, either war or some economic problem, and coming from a third world country means it's already tied to some economic kind of problem. And I thought that their explanation would not be needed, and the conversation would suffice, to tell what I wanted to convey. Thank you, Anita, for the question.
Thank you. And I think even though, yeah, it was a kind of short film, I think you did manage to pack a lot in, even in that half an hour, with just from the conversations that people were kind of making about the issue of migration. So it was a more, I think, observational, as you said, way of kind of talking about the issue. We also have a question from Sabeswara, who says, I'm from India, and here haircutting is a caste-based occupation done by the Nai community. What is the situation in Nepal and the Nepali migrants who are doing this job?
Very interesting question, because I live in Kathmandu, and most of the barber that at least I see in my neighborhood or I see in Kathmandu, the small, not so fancy local barber shops, these people are from the lower plains of Nepal. We call Tarai plains, and this place has very close tie to India, and sometimes like we even stereotype them as like Indian people, and because that culturally and the color wise also they look very similar. And what are the people from the southern plains do this job in Kathmandu, but now like hair cutting, it has become a kind of glamorous job, and other like city people have also started doing it. But in Europe or the migrants, when you leave your country, like you should be able to do all the kind of jobs, and in Europe, it was not kind of some kind of caste or creed. It was anyone who, like, if anyone was trained to do the hair cutting back in Nepal or anywhere, they're doing this to make their living.
Thank you for that, Rajan. And finally, I wanted to also ask you what you're working on right now. I mean, in the introduction, I did mention a couple of your works, but yes, if you want to talk a little bit about your the projects that you're working on right now.
Since I finished my first feature documentary last year, and it's been still traveling, and in between I started working on another feature documentary. It's it's based on human rights. Actually, there was some kind of killing in Nepal, a caste-based killing, and I have been researching and working on that since 2022. And this is the project I have been working on aggressively, but this project is very traumatizing because of the subject matter and a lot of things going on around legally also, and it's very happy. And now for the time being, just to freshen up myself, I'm trying to work on a short fiction. I'll go back to this documentary, but I'm kind of taking a break at the moment. So I'm working on two projects, a short fiction and a feature documentary.
Thank you. Both of those sound really interesting, and hopefully we'd love to see your future work and hopefully have you on future edition of Screen Southasia as well. So yes, on that note, I think we can wind up the Q&A session. Again, thank you so much, Rajan, for joining us and giving us your time and answering questions from the audience and from me. To everybody else who's listening, as we said at the beginning, please stay tuned for more future screenings under Screen Southasia, and please check out our Patreon program and support our work. Thank you so much, everyone, and good evening, or good morning, or good night.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Himal Southasian, Film Southasia. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.